All right, page 116. I conclude that the 20 letters of the Ogham alphabet were in existence long before the Formello Cerverti alphabet was brought to Italy from Greece, and that the Gallic Druids added the 5 foreign letters to them with such disdain as virtually to deny them any part in the system. What complicates the case is that the ancient Irish word for alphabet is Beth Lewis Nyan, which suggests that the order of letters in the Ogham alphabet was originally BLN, though it had become BLF before the ban on inscriptions was lifted. Besides, the accepted Irish tradition was that the alphabet originated in Greece, not Phoenicia, and was brought to Ireland by way of Spain, not Gaul. Spencer records that in his view of the present state of Ireland, 1596, it seemeth that they had them, the letters from the nation that came out of Spain. The names of the letters of the BLF alphabet are given by Roderick O'Flaherty in his 17th century Ogygia, I think, on the authority of Donald MacFirbis, a family bard of the O'Briens who had access to the old records as follows: B. Biobel, L. Loth, F or V. Forvan, N. Neagigdon, M. Moria, G. Gath, NG. Nagoimir, Y. Idra, S. Salea, H. Uria, D. Dibaeth, David, T. Telman, C. Kio, Cici, Calip, R. Reuben, A. Akab, O. Ose, U. Ura, E. Isu, I. Jachim. When recently I wrote on this subject to Dr. McAllister as the best living authority on Oghams, he replied that I must not take O'Flaherty's alphabets seriously. They all seem to me to be late artificialities, or rather pedantries, of little more importance than the affectations of Sir Percy Shafton and his kind. I shall pass on this caution in all fairness, for my argument depends on O'Flaherty's alphabet, and Dr. McAllister's is a very broad back for anyone to shelter behind who thinks I am writing nonsense. But the argument of this book began with the assumption that Guyon was concealing an alphabetic secret in his riddling poem, and the answers to the riddles, if I have not got them wrong, though Moravan and Moriah, Neesthen and Neagadon, Rhea and Reuben do not seem to match very well, approximate so closely to the Boible Loth that I feel justified in supposing that O'Flaherty was recording a genuine tradition at least as old as the 13th century A.D., and that the answers to the so far unsolved riddles will be found in the Boible letter names not yet accounted for. We can begin our secondary process of unraveling Guyon's riddles by putting Idris at place 14 as an equivalent of Idra, and removing the J from Jose, Joseph, and Jesu, Jesus, neither of which names, as Guyon the Hebrew scholar may have known, originally began with a J, and transposing Uriel and her for the medieval Irish had long lost their aspirated H, so that her and Uriel easily got confused. Then, if the answers to our unsolved riddles are to be found in the unused letters of the Boible Loth, this leaves us with Acab and Jachim, and with 5 unsolved riddles. I have been at the throne of the distributor. I was loquacious before I was gifted with speech. I am Alpha Tetragrammaton. I am a wanderer whose origin is not known. I shall be until the day of doom upon the earth. Moria, the Boible Loth equivalent of Moravan, suggests Mora, or Moriah, at both of which place Jehovah in Genesis makes a covenant with Abraham and allots a dominion to him and to his seed forever. Another name for Moriah is Mount Zion, and in Isaiah 18, Mount Zion is mentioned as the throne of the Lord of hosts, who scatters, distributes, and treads underfoot. Moria also suggests the Greek word moira, a share, lot, or distribution. If Moriah is the answer to the first of these 5 unsolved riddles, it must be linked with I have been bard of the harp of Dion of Lachlan. And we must credit the scholar Guion with interpreting the word as meaning Moriah or Morja, the god of the sea, the word Mor being the Welsh equivalent of the Hebrew Mara, the salt sea. He is, in fact, identifying Yah, the Hebrew god, with Bron, who was a grain god as well as a god of the alder. The identification is justified. One of the early gods worshipped at Jerusalem and later included in the synthetic cult of Jehovah was the harvest god Tammuz, for whom first fruits of grain were yearly brought from Bethlehem, the house of bread. The natives of Jerusalem were still wailing for him at the feast of unleavened bread in Isaiah's day. And according to Jerome, he had a sacred grove at Bethlehem. It will be remembered that the temple was built on the threshing floor of Arona, which sounds uncannily like Arwen. Sorry, allergies. Moreover, Bran's crow was equally sacred to Jehovah. Still more conclusive is Jehovah's claim to the seventh day as sacred to himself. In the contemporary astrological system, the week was divided between the sun, moon, and 7 planets, and the Sabians of Haran in Mesopotamia, who were of Aegean origin, put the days under the rule of 7 deities in the order still current in Europe: Sun, Moon, Nergal, Mars, Nabu, Mercury, Bel, Jupiter, Beltis, Venus, Cronus, Saturn. Thus, Jehovah, the god whose holiest day is Saturday, must be identified with Cronus or Saturn, who is Bron. We should credit Guion with understanding this and also with knowing that Uriel and Uriah are the same word, El and Yah being interchangeable names of the Hebrew God. The divine name of Alpha, written in 4 letters, turns out to be Achab in O'Flaherty's list of letter names, which suggest Ahab, king of Israel, a name borne also by the prophet who appears in the Acts of the Apostles as Agabus. It is the name Agabus which explains the secondary riddle. I have been loquacious before I was gifted with speech, for Agabus, who according to the pseudo-Dorotheus was one of the 70 disciples, is mentioned twice in the Acts of the Apostles. In the first mention, Acts 11, he signified by the Spirit that there would be a famine. Guion pretends to understand from signified that Agabus made signs prophesied in dumb show on that occasion, whereas in Acts 21 he spoke aloud with, "Thus saith the Holy Ghost." But Achab is not a divine name. In Hebrew it means merely father's brother. However, Achab is the Hebrew word for locust. Interesting. And the golden locust was among the Greeks of Asia Minor, a divine emblem of Apollo, the sun god. Guion, in another of the poems in the romance called Dervwa Taliesin, styles Jesus, son of Alpha, since Achab is the equivalent in this alphabet of Alpha in the Greek. This is to make Jesus the son of Achab, and since Jesus was the son of God, to make Achab a synonym of God. As for Jachim or Jachin, that was the name of one of the 2 mysterious pillars of Solomon's temple, the other being Boaz. The rabbis taught that Boaz meant in it strength, that Yikon, meant he shall establish, and that they represented respectively the sun and the moon. The Freemasons seem to have borrowed this tradition. How it happened that Solomon raised 2 pillars, one on each side of the facade of the temple, called Boaz, a word which is supposed by Hebrew scholars to have once had an L in the middle of it, and Jachin, is a question that need not concern us yet. All we must notice is that Jachim is the last letter of the alphabet, and that I in Celtic mythology is the letter of death and associated with the yew tree. Thus, Jachim is a synonym for death. Euripides, in his frantic Hercules, used the same word, akema, to mean the deadly hissing of a serpent. and how death came into the world and what comes after death have always been the grand subjects of religious and philosophical dispute. Death will always remain upon the earth according to Christian dogma until the day of doom.